everyone, thank you so much for joining me for the Love from Lizi Happy Harvest Special Edition Kit video. With the pattern paper and the dies from the kit, I cut 4 individual leaves and used various colors distress ink to layer up the color. Metallic ribbon from my stash was used to layer various different pattern papers with varying sizes, widths, and lengths. I cut acorns with a punch that I had in my stash. I changed the orientation of the stamp to horizontal, taking the various leaves and acorns and bunching them up, tying them with jute to match the burlap paper. I decorated the inside with matching pattern paper and saved an acorn for the inside. I used the Happy Fall Y'all stamp set, keeping it in its original orientation. With increased entertaining and something both adults and children both enjoy, a mini cup, which is made by 5 3/4 inches and 3.5, scoring on the long side at 7/8, 1 3/4, 2 5/8, 3.5, 4 3/8, and 5 1/4 inches, paying attention to that 1/2 inch strip. Now you're going to rotate with the portion that's going to fold over and be the inside of the cup on the left hand side, and with 2 scoring marks on the short side at 1 and 2 1/4 inches. The handle is made with a 3 by 1 inch piece of coordinating paper, and that is scored on the portrait or short side every 1/4 inch at 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, and 3/4 of an inch. Following the cutting chart, you cut up to the first score line on the bottom section of the cup. Removing the tab on the 1/2 inch side from the bottom of the cup, you're going to cut creatively to make 2 tabs, and once I remove the scraps, you'll be able to see that clearly. Now you fold your top into the inside of the cup, making sure to work your score lines. Now it's important to work the fibers of your cardstock or pattern paper, and if it's heavy or good quality, you'll be able to be a little bit aggressive with it, and you just want that to turn in from each edge, and that tab that you made will fit snugly in to the opposite side. And then you apply glue to the portion that you fold over and in to the tabs so that you make the 2 tabs meet on that one side, and with glue on both front and back you tuck that in. Now when you put these together, you want to the one that's by the seam is number 1, and then you work your way across, and then you glue so that each end is square. You glue number 3 and number 6, number 2 and number 5, and finally number 4 and number 1, applying the glue to the bottom part of the tab on, for example, number 6. And then if you want that to be a little more rounded, you just work the fibers a little more, and then finally you work on your handle. You put glue on each edge and you fold them into the center, and finally you fold the paper in half, applying glue at each portion that you fold. Nuvo works really well. It gives a nice secure hold, and applying the handles a lot easier with this glue than some. So the portion that you want to be shown is what you glue on to the edge. I put it where my seam is so that I keep everything all together. And then with a scrap or coordinating paper, You can cut a circle or a square depending on what look you're looking for, and usually a 2.5 inch square piece will cut a good size circle or square. I'm just applying a little bit of pressure to that handle so that it has a nice rounded edge. When it's applied to the base, it gives it stability, and you can put a number of different things in here. Here's a Ferrero Rocher, and you can stack these up to make a display or have them next to the settings. And on to place cards. This is a triangle shape, which can also hold after 8 mints or even little hats. It depends on what you want to use it for. So this one was used with craft, and it's with a 7.5 and 5 3/4 inch piece. You score on the long side at 1 1/4 and 6 1/4, and on the short side at 1.5, 2 3/4, 4 and 5 1/4. Then you cut up from each end, removing the square off of each. And if you start at that 1/2 inch side and work your way in, you can easily see which is your center. The long end there is where you can use punches and decorate, and the short end is where you apply your adhesive, the 1/2 inch side there. And then you just want to notch these sides in so that they will fold in nicely. And taking a stylus, well, you fold your edges. So that's where your adhesive would go. These can fold flat and store for your events. In the center of each one of the flaps on each side, you mark the center and then take a metal ruler and work from your first score line up to that mark. So the corner of your score lines on each one to the center of that mark. And when you work that, they fold in nicely. Now, if you want to fold flat, you could put your glue, dry adhesive on the 1/2 inch flap and each one of these ends until you're ready to assemble. You tuck them in to the sides. Make sure that each end is lined up with the center portion. Makes a nice clean finish that way. And hold it until the glue dries. I find with craft sometimes you have to hold it a little longer than other papers. Using a chipboard sticker to the front, I applied Happy Thanksgiving. This is another chipboard sticker from the same collection within the kit. And then I used the alphabet stickers and wrote a name on the side. A little bit of burlap ribbon so that it will coordinate with the theme of the whole kit. But you certainly don't have to decorate it this way. You can decorate it any way you want. And I used a peel-off, gold glitter peel-off from one of Lizi's most recent collections. A 3x3 card set box can be used for 3x3 card sets, but they can also be used for small gifts. So with an 11 by 5.5 inch piece of cardstock, scoring on the long or landscape side at 1 inch, 2 inch, 5.5 inches, 6.5 inches, and finally 10. And then we rotate to the short or portrait side, scoring at 1, and 4.5 inches. One end has 2 score marks, so you're going to cut up to the second score mark. On each edge, cutting towards the center, removing the extra bulk made by the score tool, and you're going to remove the bottom corners on each side. So you're left with a flap on each end. And now you're going to rotate to the other end where there's only 1 score mark, and you're going to remove the little squares on each end, removing the bulk caused by the score tool. Now we're going to work on the score lines that don't have anything done, and they are in the center. So you cut up to the first score line, you rotate, and you cut up to that first score line. So it's like a backwards L. That is done on both sides, and this too has the bulk removed, so you can see the flap that it creates. And then as you move on to the next side, you just repeat the same thing up to the first score line, and then you rotate and cut up to the first score line again. So on the left you have the bottom, and on the right you have the top. So where there's 1 score line, you can round those corners if you wish, and now we're going to work on the bottom. So you're going to take a little edge off of each one of those flaps, fold the flaps towards the center, and make sure to apply your adhesive over each of those as well as up to the first score line on the center flap. Now you're going to fold that flap over your edges, so make sure you have those edges in there glued well and all the way. As you can see, that's how the top folds. So you fold the flaps up as you did the other section, and then you glue that at the 5 and 6 inch score line, holding them snug and straight. I put a little flap of ribbon on the front of mine so you could pull that up when you wanted to open it. And then I attached a panel from the pattern paper sheets, 12 by 12 sheets. And now I'm going to make a variety of 3 by 3 cards. I used craft paper. I cut them 6 by 3 inches, and I scored at 3 inches. Taking a few of the panels from the pattern paper, cutting them up from the 12 by 12 sheets, and applying gold strips as well as other pattern paper. I used the sunflower stamp with my Zig Real Color brush markers, applying dimension. And then I had some copper shatter as well as copper thread and beads that I applied to the center, and then I worked on a few extra panels, making 6 in total. I decorated the insides, and I also have 6 envelopes. The box will hold 6 envelopes and 6 individual cards. Standalone tabletop display cards are very useful for entertaining and can be made with an 8 3/4 by 4 1/4 inch cardstock, scoring at 3 1/4, 6 1/2, 7 1/2, and 8 1/2. The trick is to make sure that you burnish the score lines well. You apply adhesive to the 8 1/2 inch area right up against that score line, and then you just fold and it stands alone. These can be made ahead of time using a panel and stickers. I applied that, and this is identified as a sweet cart. Next we have a standalone tabletop display, which is smaller. It is 6 3/4 by 4 1/4 inches, and you score at 2 1/4, 4 1/2, 5 1/2, and 6 1/2, and you burnish these lines well, applying the double-sided adhesive to that 1/4 inch strip, right at the 6.5 score mark. Burnish your lines well, and then fold that up to meet it. This is being identified as a vegetable, a carrot dish, and then it's decorated with gold texturized mirror cardstock that was in the kit. A panel was cut down that was part of the pattern paper sheets and applied to the center. Here we have what we made today. We have 2 standalone display cards, a place marker, a mini cup with a Ferrero Rocher inside, but you could certainly put anything in it, a card, and that could be a thank you card as well for the invite. And here we have the 3x3 cards. You could have many different card designs included in these. These are just using the materials in the kit as well as the stamp, and then one that I wanted to show that you could even do this for children. Christmas tags would be a nice item to give somebody this time of year. The 3x3 envelopes could be used from an envelope punch board. I used a die. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to get in touch. Bye-bye.